Shannon, why don't you share a little bit about your background and kind of your role and what's going on there?
Sure. Well, Josh, I just want to echo what many of the other presenters have said. It's an honor to present today. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Um, Much like Matt, this is my second career, and I didn't really intend to be in higher education on purpose. It was sort of an accident. I spent 17 years in insurance and finance with FCCI Insurance Group and LPL as a manager in operations, project management, and a licensed financial advisor and insurance agent. Sort of felt a call to pastoral ministry, so I came to BBC to get my theological training. And after getting my bachelor's and master's, the door opened for me to actually start at the school. So I started at the school, was asked to assume the director of online education here after several years of working in institutional research. And so we've now launched our online degrees through our partnership with you, and we're now almost 2 months in. So
Good deal. Good deal. Okay. Well, why don't you go ahead and start your presentation?
all right, just some quick assumptions before I begin, and I'll hurry through some of the slides a little faster than others, but just some assumptions are that if you're going to start a new online program, that you've already taken care of the accreditation work, the NC-SARA, the VA, all of those things are already done, in place, approved, substantive change, whatever the case may be in your institution. And so now you are ready to then essentially implement. And so one of the things I want to talk about and sort of think through, I've got these sort of top 10 things, and they're really areas, but I want to kind of go through them. So as we think about things that we're going to, deal with, identify your institutional structure is sort of like, what are you going to do? Is this going to be an online school all of its own under your institution? Are you going to try to integrate it with your other programs? So making those decisions up front is going to be very helpful to you as you go through the process. And then I think recognizing the similarities and the differences between traditional and online modalities. So as we talked about how we're going to do this, we had some people that said, well, the online people will need to do all the same things that the resident or on-campus students do. And we said, well, wait a minute, we've got to think through that. And they're different demographics, they're different students. One is primarily adult education. The other one is a lot of the 18, 19-year-olds that want to come get the college experience. So you have to understand there's similarities but differences, and make sure that you honor those and don't get caught up in too much red tape trying to make both of them identical. And I think identifying an implementation leader, that's really important, is making sure that you have someone that can spearhead the process. Of course, you need collaborative work across the institution, from the board all the way to the faculty and the staff, there's no question. But you need an implementation leader that can really be the champion, the bell ringer, the person that's going to go out and try to make things happen, because at the end of the day, you have to get things done. The second thing is strategic planning. So as I think about this, what resources do you have or need? And by resources, I'm not talking about just financial. Many of us are smaller colleges, and as all colleges are experiencing right now, resources are limited. So it's not necessarily what resources financially do you have or need, but what do you have that maybe you're not taking full advantage of? Is it your alumni base? Maybe you have experience, maybe you have physical resources. What is it that your reputation, what is it that you have that you can use to leverage in the process? And then plan for tomorrow, not just for today. I think, we want to solve today's problems, but we have to be thinking about tomorrow. We have to be building systems, not just solving problems. And I'm a big advocate for systems. You want to build a system so that the system keeps going and that's sustainable. Otherwise, you're just constantly trying to fix problems. Plan for success. So again, the idea here is you want to, the goal is thinking, how am I going to be successful? And then let's make sure we plan as if we're going to be successful. We don't want to be surprised by success. And then prepare for adjustments. One of the things that you have to realize and that we've experienced is plan A on paper can look great, but plan B may be necessary. So prepare for adjustments. Things are constantly evolving and changing, and we need to be flexible and be able to adapt and change as needed. And then I think outside the box when strategic planning. We're working on some initiatives right now that are I would call them outside of the box. So just sort of creative or innovative solutions or ideas that you might have on ways to think through applying online within the context of maybe even the resident, even though we try not to mix those two here very much. But there's some outside the box thinking that we're working on right now. And then establish written goals and importantly, corresponding plans. So you can throw a goal down and have a goal, but that's really, this again is strategic planning 101. You've got to have a plan of how you're going to get to that goal. So our goal was to have 35 to 45 online students at the end of year one, which would be next August. And as of today, which is less than 2 months in, we have 54. So now our goals have shifted and improved and changed, but how are those plans come along with those goals, and how are you measuring those? Academic programs and policies, I could just advocate don't reinvent the wheel. And I know that in higher education, we really advocate borrowing from each other, using those resources that have already trailblazed and have already done the work. So we try not to reinvent the wheel. When we were implementing programs, we took some of the programs we had, we looked at our outcomes, we looked at our goals, we looked at the classes in the programs, we looked at, you name it, and we didn't reinvent the wheel. We didn't reinvent the wheel when it came to creating our academic catalog for online education. We didn't start from scratch. So there's a lot of things we didn't reinvent the wheel with, and I think you can save a lot of time by doing that. And then collaborating with others is so important. Obviously, it's what we're doing today is collaborating. So we need to collaborate, use your resources, borrow what you can, build what you can't. So, buy or borrow whatever you can. InterLearn has been, again, a shameless plug for them. They've been phenomenal at being able to use curriculum and things, but then sometimes you've got to build something. If you can't borrow it, then you've got to build it. But I think you've got to pick your battles on that and know what's really important to you. And that goes into the last bullet point on this slide, which is be you, be true. I mean, you've got to be you. Your institution has to have your DNA. It has to have your fingerprints all over, whether it's the curriculum, the programs, the whatever it is, fill in the blank. It's got to be true to your mission, vision, and values. And so at the end of the day, you have to make sure that you're being you and that you're being true. Otherwise, it's problematic. I'm going to move on this one pretty quickly. The learning management system, again, it's just all the little details, just making sure that the system's set up, how the framework is done, how are you setting up cohorts, how are you setting up terms, courses, how are you going to do all those setup pieces inside the framework of the system, just all the little things you have to think through that you don't necessarily think of up front. And then external user needs. How are the end users, meaning students and faculty, how is that system going to be helpful and them being successful and persisting? Thinking through all those little pieces. And then internal user needs is something that I think sometimes it's easy to forget, that you have student accounts, billing, financial aid, you have all those pieces of the puzzle that are using the same system, but on the back end for billing. So how are they going to do their job? How is online going to be a problem for them trying to take care of all the billing and the financial pieces? So thinking through those pieces can just save you some time and some pain down the road. And then financial aid, which is closely linked to number 4, I would just suggest developing helpful documents and or tools. And this is useful not only for the student side, but it's useful for the staff. So our director of financial aid, we've developed calendars, and we have many tools that he can look at the cohorts and he can understand what term it's in and what academic year it's in, and he knows how to bill the students properly and apply aid properly. And they're very self-explanatory, very easy to deal with. So it's been helpful for the students and for both internal personnel to have these tools and resources available. And then can you make process improvements? I was raised in a corporation where it was constantly looking for ways to improve what you can do. So making process improvements, and I'll give you one example. One is our resident side. All of the financial aid pieces are done manually. So you would mail the student the financial aid documents, or they would sign them when they're in the office enrolling, and they would do all that by hand in physical paper. But with online, well, the students aren't in the office. Most of them are remote, they're distance education, and or we want it to happen quickly. We don't want to mail them documents and have them returned. So we created and verified with our attorneys that editable PDFs where our financial aid will create the cost of attendance documents, the payment plan options. He creates PDF documents that can be signed electronically and returned to him. So we can process financial aid documents within a matter of seconds now. So those are just some process improvements that we've made on our end just to make the process faster and easier and more efficient all around. And then I'd say don't be afraid to ask the experts. And you all that have been presenting today are experts. So one of the things we on the financial aid side, we had our financial aid auditors check out everything we're doing. We want to make sure, is this going to work? Is what we've put together going to be problematic, or will it not be an issue when we have our audit next year? We don't want to be surprised. We don't want to have something come up that we could have circumvented. So I think we can't be afraid to ask the experts. Sometimes you just don't know what you don't know. And so we've got to be humble in the sense that we're asking those that do. Faculty engagement. Some of you have touched on this, and I really appreciated something Matt said about these faculty that were resistant, but you want buy-in, not bow out, right? You want buy-in, not bow out. You want the faculty to buy into the process rather than just totally rejecting it. And to do that, part of the steps are to recognize traditional faculty fears and concerns. And I think one of those that I've heard again from multiple presenters today is that online just can't be as good a quality as seated. And we've got to be in the classroom giving them 1 hour lectures. That's the only way they're going to learn what I want to teach them. And that's just simply not true. So we have to teach the teachers. We have to help lead them through the process. And some are more leadable than others. And so we just have to recognize those fears and concerns and sort of try to assuage those. Determine your faculty approach. Are you going to try to use some of your faculty that you have right now that are traditional resident or on-campus lecturers and teachers, or are you going to go with primarily adjunct online professors? We are doing a little bit of both. So I think figuring that out is important, and we felt it was important to get some of our faculty engaged in that process. Also, identify increased faculty diversity and engagement opportunities. You know, we've been able to really energize our base. We have a lot of highly qualified and accredited faculty from all over the world that are products of BBC. And up until August, we didn't really have an opportunity to engage them in teaching or mentoring students. And now this has given us an opportunity to identify some of those that can do that and do it well. And so the only thing that comes along with that, though, that I will warn you of is just be careful. The more states you get into, if you have a home base like we do in Missouri, when you're trying to have a faculty from Illinois or Texas or wherever it may be, South Dakota, that state and getting the I-9 and getting all of the work comp and all the things that are part of making that adjunct faculty an employee, that can be a challenge. So just think through some of those steps. And then plan for faculty mentoring and development. Of course, again, if you have experienced online faculty already, that's great. If you don't, there's probably going to need the need for mentoring and development when it comes to those faculty. So what's the plan for that? Staff infrastructure, we've taken a different approach, and I would be interested to learn some of your approaches, but we determined our staffing approach, and we went with primarily to launch part-time staff, and we went with focused versus broad. So I would call us very lean and mean. We've spent relatively little money on human resources or marketing right now. And so our budget is looking very good, but part of that was an intentional approach to say, we're going to use part-time staff and the recruiting and admission side, but it's going to be focused. So we have a person dedicated to domestic applications, a person dedicated to international applications, a person we're about to bring on that's focused on veterans. So we've taken very focused approach, and so that we have masters instead of jack of all trades. And so we obviously want some cross training, but we really wanted a focused approach on that. And so we're very lean and mean. But I would say the devil's in the details. Be ready, because there's little things that you don't necessarily think about, like who's going to make up the student files, all the little details, all the little staffing and administrative things that you still need to get done. who's going to do that? And we try to keep all of our files online, but there are still little things that need to be done that you just don't think about, and who's going to do that, and they all take time. So I would, again, suggest to hire proactively, not reactively. We try to think through what are we going to need. That's why I said we want to go after veterans. So we're going to hire a person that's veterans focused for enrollment and admissions. So we're trying to do that in a proactive way, not reactive way. And then I'm a big fan of good to great. So the right people in the right places. That's so important in any organization or institution. You've got to have the right people in the right places. We've been very, very selective as to who we put into any positions in the online administration and in that area. And I've even waited to hire some people until I found the right person. So I'd rather hire right than hire wrong because I needed someone too quickly. That goes back to the proactive versus reactive. Program support. Again, these are the little things to think through. New student and faculty orientation resources. We've developed faculty and student resources that we send to all of our new faculty or new students. Our library resources are continually expanding. One of our initiatives that we're wanting to do, and that wasn't necessarily in the budget at first, but as we've moved more into this, I feel like it's important, and that is we're trying to buy as many of the online resources for the library edition so that they will be resources available to our students for free. That's not just for marketing and not just because we're charging student fees, but it's a practical thing. We have students from around the world that are in our programs. We have missionaries that are in other countries that are in our programs, and getting a book doesn't get delivered from Amazon Prime in 2 days in Madagascar. So we have the practical need to have online resources available to our students, but also it makes it easier for students to assimilate if they want to transfer here, or if they're going to start maybe up until the start of a class. Now they don't have to try to order those books. They're already here. They're already in the library. If they want to buy the hard copy, they certainly can do that. I'm a hard copy guy myself, but we want those resources available for multiple reasons. And then academic support and tutoring services. Again, our library has an academic resource center. We have web-enabled tutoring resources for all of our online students that they can use our academic resource center remotely, and they can schedule a time to talk to a librarian or a time to talk to a tutor and get that support, as well as providing tech support. We have that as well. So just thinking through, how are you going to support your students? We want them to persist and to be successful. And then marketing strategies, as we sort of round out our list here, considering your context and target demographic. Are you targeting global, national, or regional, program specific? Maybe you're in an area that has a lot of agriculture. Are you going to target agriculture students? Are you going to target, criminal justice? What is it that you're targeting? Is there a program specific marketing campaign? And then for us, our alumni base and our institutional community has been huge in our marketing. We have thousands and thousands and thousands of alumni, and they're making a difference all over the world. And some of our alumni are very notable, and so we're trying to leverage that alumni base, and we're marketing to them, and we're having them market for us. So just considering those targets that you're trying to achieve, and then considering various methods. I know that there's a lot of different ways people can market, but what's worked for us, and if I can be frank, we have 54 students. We've only spent about $3,000 on marketing. And it's not because we're geniuses. It's just, we just chose Google and Facebook. That's what we've done. We've done our website and Google and Facebook. That's where we've spent almost all of our money. And that's just a drop in the bucket when you look at the numbers of what we should have spent per student. But we've only spent a few $1,000s, but we've reaped a lot of rewards, and part of that's because of our alumni base and our Google, Facebook, and our website initiatives. We have done a little bit of print and mail, and we have done a little bit of radio locally, but those are also some other good options, and I'm sure there's many, many more. But just thinking through a focused approach on that, and we've done that. Everything that we do, we try, and then we assess, did this work? How well did it work? And do we need to keep doing this? So one of the things we've tried to become very good at here is assessing what we're doing. And that leads me to my last point, which is assessment strategies. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention this when it comes to academics and the differences between on-campus and online, understanding that there are assessment strategies that we're going to need for both. we administer an online Bible test to all on-campus students, but it was a developed assessment that was done in-house, and it cannot be done online remotely without being proctored. So we're adopting the ABHE Bible knowledge test for the online students. So just thinking through the different options that you have maybe for on-campus, and I think we're going to move the on-campus to the ABHE test as well, so that there's consistency. But just thinking through that, institutional program and course outcomes, how are you assessing those? What are your outcomes, and how are you assessing them? And one of the ways that we have been doing that is we partnered with a company to do online course evaluations. They used to be done in-house, but now we have the ability to do them through a third party, and we can do those for every course that happens. So all of our online courses, we are assessing those with course evaluations to improve, to get faculty evaluations, course evaluation, etc. But it helps us to determine some of those course outcomes, as well as signature assignments and capstones, etc. And then faculty evaluations, this is a big piece, and we're in the process of actually bringing on an academic chair just for online education, who is going to spearhead faculty evaluations and the overall academic piece. So just those assessment strategies, how are you going to do that? How have you thought through those? What's going to work for you as an institution? And then my last thing was, what questions do you have? And the thing I always tell my teams, desire perfection, demand excellence. And, desire perfection is a goal to aim for. Excellence to me is an absolute requirement. We've got to be excellent in all that we do. So with that, do we have any questions or comments?
What questions does everyone have? I know we've lost a number of people because they're on East Coast and their day is over. Well, Shannon, thank you very much for your time today. This was a great presentation. You covered so much good information and just walked through the details. I know this will be a good help for those that are looking to start up programming. So thank you so much.
Well, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.